Brendan Martin hanging on. But, Brendan, you got a plan. You've got a plan for this hurricane.
I've got a plan.
And you will be ready. Nobody is better prepared than Brendan Martin in Ocala, Florida.
I've got my water. I've got my batteries. I've got my battery charger to back up the show. I got alcohol. I got water. I got alcohol. I'm ready.
And sleep with your shoes on in case tornado hits. That way you don't have to worry about walking around on glass. I live up here in Memphis. It is Tornado Alley up here. You're in Hurricane Alley. Look, got a great show today. Matt Dean checks in from Memphis. John Hartwell, ADULM. Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. Jordan Hill in Athens. Lots to talk about. All 16 SEC schools. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Smash it. Subscribe. It helps us so much on this show when you subscribe, and tell your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, esteemed colleagues, even your priest during Mass, after Mass, of course. Look, allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. Get pen and paper handy, because you will want to pay attention, because class is in session now. Get ready. Here we come.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man, we got Coach Matt Dean already in the square. John Hartwell will come into his Hollywood Square in just a minute. Brendan Martin, our executive producer in Ocala, as we mentioned. Look, hooked them. That's kind of the new, or there's the O, okay? Or there's the Gator Chop. Lots of cheers. Hotty toddy. What that means, I don't know. I know this much. You know, I talk a lot about our sponsors and our friends of the show. Bim Bam, if you're in Oxford, Mississippi, they're serving breakfast now. And I'm telling you, it is unbelievable from all reports. So going down to Ole Miss for the Kentucky game, go by there on Jackson Avenue, right by the Vitamin Shop, one of our sponsors, out there in Oxford, Mississippi, and Olive Branch. So look, guys, big games this weekend. Matt, I was talking with one of my football connoisseurs yesterday, and this guy has grown up with Barry Switzer and Jimmy Johnson and Johnny Majors hanging out at his house with his dad. He knows football. He's connected. He said yesterday, and I quote him close to verbatim. Isn't that near Grenada? But anyway, he said, I have yet to see a dominant football team this year. I just don't see it. And I said, well, Coach Tuberville used to say they ought not to have rankings till about the 5th or 6th week of the season, so you start getting some separation from the pack. But the man from Davenport, Iowa, who has forgotten more than the rest of the free world knows about what goes on in football, Matt Dean, have you seen a dominant team in the SEC or anywhere to this point?
Good morning, guys. Good to be back around with you. And
good morning.
I hope man, we can keep some of that water off your house with that tarp. That definitely helps.
Yeah, well, it's about 150 footer. I think it cost me like $1 a foot. I think it's the biggest tarp, and there's only one left. Yeah, and then I went, and I was gonna get a generator. Because Ocala's got a lot of trees.
Yes.
And so we lose power. So I was like, man, last time we had a big hurricane run through here, we lost power for 8 days. So, but that was Irma that hit us direct. We're going to hit some of that dirty wash, that little spin, but it's going right. I mean, folks in Tallahassee, if you don't know by now, you're under a rock, but God, get the safety. The only saving grace of this thing is moving really fast.
Yeah.
So it's not going to hang out.
Yeah.
But Rob, to answer your question from my perspective, I thought we saw a dominant performance from Texas against Michigan just because of the venue and the fact, whatever you want to say about Michigan, they are the returning national champions. and they did figure out a way to beat USC. But then again, how good do we know USC really is? How good do we know a lot of these teams are? Because everybody's got flaws. I'll even go to the West Coast where Oregon had, a couple games where people were wondering about their offense. And then they had a great game against their bitter rival, Oregon State. So I think it's about the old coaching adage, you want to get better every week. And if you can find a way to get better every day and every week, by the time you get to the meat and potatoes of it, you should be okay. Now, unfortunately, if you're Georgia and Alabama, you play in one of the most important games of the whole season. I think I saw a statistic, guys. The winner of this game has a 90% plus chance of making the college football playoff. Now, the loser of this game still has above 60%, but whoever wins this game is really in a great position to get to the CFP.
Yeah. Well, we had the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State, beginning of the season. That's unusual. Usually it's later in the season when it's monsoon season out on the West Coast. John Hartwell, AD at ULM. John, ULM, y'all played out in Austin last week against Texas. You were up in the press box. You saw that game. What was your takeaway, the good, the bad, and the ugly? How good is Texas? Look over my right-hand shoulder. I'm like the weatherman. There they are with the rest of the SEC. But, again, they're just big. It's a big state. But what did you think about this team? And I know Arch Manning played the game. Quinn Ewers was out.
Yeah, I mean, they're very talented. They're deep. Obviously, as you said, Manning started in place of Ewers. He had a good game. He made some mistakes, threw a couple of interceptions that we weren't able to capitalize on both of them. But I tell you what's impressive about them is their offensive and defensive lines. They are massive. I know people talk about Sarkisian and throwing it vertically. They can run the football too, and I think that gives them a chance. And their defense is, their defensive line is really good. But as our coaches and Coach Vincent was on here a couple of weeks ago, as he looked through some of their film, he said, "Here's the really scary thing about Texas. Even in the SEC, most of the DBs and safeties are, 5'11", 6 foot. Texas has 6'2" corners. I mean, they have got some very athletic folks on both sides of the ball. So I'm not saying, hey, they're going to go undefeated, but I don't see them not being right there in every game, and they're gonna, they're gonna have a lot of success in the SEC.
John, before we go back and start bouncing around, we're going to go rapid fire in a minute. I want to ask you and Matt both, as athletic directors, what would your reaction be based on what we know about that quarterback at UNLV that quit on his team? I don't know if you don't have anything, a contract in writing, you can't do any fighting. But John first and then Matt.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind to me is there's no I in team. Clearly, this was a personal, selfish move, regardless of what had been promised before. I mean, I don't know how he can, he's going to remain enrolled, probably can do all his classes online. But I'll tell you this, if I was his teammate, if this was Citadel basketball circa 1983 to 87, it would not be a pretty scene in the locker room right there. So I don't, you see, I guess a D lineman from SC last night declared he was doing the same thing.
Here we go.
It is, yeah. I mean, and I think these are some of the unintended or situations that were not discussed up front when kind of some of these things were done. And as you read all about those things, the thing that scares me the most probably is the agents, because this is now you've got, not that you haven't had quote agents, whether real or perceived, involved in NIL, but here are these agents basically running the show now. And, for a guy that was a quarterback at Holy Cross last year that was, enjoying his collegiate experience, all of a sudden the collegiate experience has gone out the window. It's, hey, how can I leverage this to put as much money in my pocket as I can? And, it's, I don't like the path it's going down.
John, I wanted to ask you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Rob, but I just wanted to say, we talked to Urban Meyer yesterday. It was a great interview, which is on our channel. If you missed it, you missed the show last night, but we posted it this morning. We just talked a lot about, culture, mostly of the SEC, but obviously he's coached elsewhere. We're just talking about how, all of that has changed, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on this show. But, it's hard not to start to drive it home when you see the UNLV thing and you see these other players. Do you think that comes back? And this is for Matt and for John, and I'll go with you, Matt. Do you really think that this is we've come, we're at this tipping point right now where it's like, like how do you can't fix it as a whole? So do you have to fix it internally as a school? Because it feels like it's becoming more like the onus is back on y'all.
Yeah, the timing of this is really interesting too, because Judge Wolkin today is the deadline day, for some of the hearing on the House settlement. So how the events of the last 48 hours in terms of those student athletes electing to opt out to enter the portal prior to burning their red shirt. That's really interesting timing there, and we'll see what the judge does there. But it may change. Back to your question, Brandon, it may change how people approach things, because again, this totally erodes the team chemistry there at UNLV. And they had gotten off to a tremendous start, arguably with Northern Illinois losing last week, maybe had risen to the cream of the crop in terms of controlling their own destiny to get to the CFP as the group of 5 member. But it is now with this creates a whole new situation. And, is this yet another silo that coaches have to look at in recruiting? Hey, what? And I don't know that there's any guarantee against that not happening, but, are you now looking at, again, chemistry has always been important regardless the team sport, but, you look at something like this and it's it makes you shake your head and say, hey, where are we going with this?
Matt Dean. Yeah, I agree.
As always, I agree with everything John says, and that's usually a path to my success in this show.
I don't know about all that.
He's the tallest guy on the show.
It's the $20 you Venmo me. That's where it gets you.
I got to do that today. But I'm going to throw this at you guys, because I took a deeper dive into this after I found out about it, because I agree with John on, UNLV, great start. I think they just beat Kansas on the road, if I'm not mistaken. Then I see, okay, what's this guy like statistically? And then I look, he's throwing – now, he's a runner apparently, because I have not watched him play, but he's only throwing like 43% completion rate, right? Then I hear stories that the number 1 wide receiver is like, yeah, I'm glad he's gone. I want the backup because maybe I'll get the ball. But then when you think about it, guys, there's so many levels of we put ourselves in this situation, because this young man statistically is probably nowhere on the NFL eye chart. Would we agree about that? I mean, if you look at his numbers – he's probably not an NFL prospect, maybe not even a UDFA guy, maybe not even a hold a clipboard guy. And maybe I'm selling him short. But I'm just looking at it from his business perspective, which is totally selfish here. John, you're right. I mean, as a teammate, you want to bury this guy. But if he thinks he can go out and get money next year and, invest that money before he goes in the business world, I mean, selfishly, it's probably a good play for him, because – he either didn't get paid or he had a complete ignorance of his value. One of the two. The truth always lies somewhere in the middle. So I think it's with Bear Alexander, there's probably a guy different with USC that will end up on an NFL roster. So I don't know the motivation there unless he's looking to go to a higher profile school. But USC is a pretty doggone high profile school. But
Yeah,
you look at them defensively this year. I mean, Michigan ran the ball right down their throats. I mean, they only threw for like 36, 37 yards in that win. So what does that say about a D tackle if his team just got basically gouged at the line of attack? I don't know. So
Bear Alexander started his career. He's from Texas.
Yeah.
He started at Georgia. Then he quit on them and transferred to Southern Cal, the University of Spoiled Children. That's what USC stands for. Okay. Then he's quitting now. This guy is absolutely never welcome on campus again. I promise you this. As in business, in marriage, in sports, you got to stick together. And we said this. I thought about this last night, and now the Bear Alexander thing. You'll start seeing it. And I'm telling you right now, we need this kind of crash and burn to happen.
Yeah.
For the market to reset.
Right.
Because John is an athletic director. You, Matt, I think people have forgotten something. And this goes to a conversation I had with an AD at a Memphis area high school. Matt, I'm not going to name it, but it's a big one. A 7th grade or 8th grade kid with his parents came to the coach's office, the high school basketball coach, and had a plan, said, look, this is where our son is going to play. We think he's a better 2 versus a 3. And the athletic director told me, he goes, I just sat there like this. And like, are you through? He goes, no, let me just tell you how I run things. And I can't say those words on this show, women and children, widows, orphans, everybody they're watching. John, Matt, somebody's got to be in charge. And right now, nobody is. So shame on these people. There's going to be more of it. And the reaction of the fans needs to be brutal, quick, and basically take these people out at the knees. Let's talk about some games this weekend. And John, you know, you saw Texas. ULM's got to play at Troy. It's a big weekend in Alabama. UAB's got a game. Auburn's got a game against Oklahoma. The battle of who has the quarterback. Alabama and Georgia. What are you seeing in the SEC right now, John, out of the top teams that makes you think they're going to run the tables or not?
You know, I know some people listening in may say, oh, that's a homer because he spent 10 years there. But I tell you, Lane Kiffin has got it rolling right now for the Rebels. The Rebels are, looking really good. It'll be interesting to see which Kentucky team shows up. You know, they've played really well, played Georgia really well. But Ole Miss has got it going on. Obviously, the Georgia-Alabama game is huge this weekend. You know, the nice thing is looks like the weather's going to get out of the way and not be a factor in that. And then Auburn, Oklahoma, for a different reason, maybe 2 teams coming off losses last week. And, you know, I know we talked a little bit about this before. Last week was kind of a must win to get the folks off Hugh Freeze's back. And I'll tell you, this week becomes even bigger. I mean, and Oklahoma is no slouch. And speaking of Oklahoma, Tennessee, to me,
yes.
A lot of people want to say Georgia and Alabama are the premier teams. What Josh Heupel took that team into Norman last week and was able to accomplish, was really something impressive. Almost as impressive as the next evening when he and Peyton accompanied Morgan Wallen out onto the stage in Neyland Stadium.
Wow. Well, John, one thing real quick. You spent 10 years at Ole Miss. You do know Hugh Freeze. A lot of people saying he's burning Auburn to the ground. I don't agree with that. I think he rolled the dice on Peyton Thorne and said, hey, if I go get him some skill players and surround him with more talent, he'll be better. But the same problems Peyton had last year, he has this year. Other than that, he's recruiting he's got the 4th best class for the class of 25 right now. You got to keep winning to hold it together. But what would you say to Auburn fans who are ready to, hey, hold my beer, let me push the panic button? You can't do that. That never works.
Yeah, you can't. Every time you start over, there's a learning curve involved. I don't care how talented a coach is or how much they've won other places. Here's the thing, though, Rob. Don't discount, back to what we were just talking about, NIL and chemistry. And, you can have the very best recruiting classes on paper.
Yes.
But money does crazy things to people. And whether it's the student athlete themselves, the player themselves, their parents, the agents involved in this, whoever, don't discount the dynamics of that. And I got to watch just a little bit of the Auburn game the other day, and there's something amiss there. I'm not
Correct.
sure.
I agree.
The right hand didn't act like they knew what the left hand was doing.
Are you talking about the IRS? I'm sorry. Go
ahead. and again, you lose that locker room. I don't care how talented you are, especially when you're playing formidable opponents.
Yeah.
It's every Saturday is a dog eat dog day. And if you don't have your locker room squared away and your chemistry squared away, it's going to be tough to win.
And let me say this on behalf of all good people that are true competitors. I totally disagree with Hugh Freeze when his comments the other day about Arkansas. We would beat them 9 out of 9 times. Shut up and give credit to Arkansas for getting the win and move on. You can't do it. I mean, I've seen coaches stuck in the past. It never works. Good for Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino. I'm going up there next weekend for the Tennessee game. I just wanted to get out there in advance because I don't want all the Arkansas fans coming after me with water balloons and eggs. But, Matt, go ahead.
No, first thing I want to say, I quickly want to go back to UNLV. Just know this. Barry Odom has done a terrific job with that program. Coaching matters, and I fully expect they will have success with their number 2. Does that mean they beat Boise State, whoever else is in their path for that final spot? I don't know the answer to that question yet. But coaching matters. And, looking at the whole SEC picture, guys, with this 12-team playoff, it's phenomenal. We're in week 4, and we're talking about Georgia, Alabama, but John's right. Tennessee looks great. That win at Oklahoma, nighttime prime football, and we've associated Tennessee the last several years with offense, obviously with Heupel being an offensive mind. Give credit to their defense. And you look at what they did to Oklahoma, my gosh, they put them in a quarterback crisis. I mean, you're talking about benching the 5-star and bringing in Hawkins. Now, Hawkins did move the ball a little bit, but Oklahoma-Auburn's a real intriguing game. And, Rob, I did hear that comment about the 9 out of 10, and that soured me a little bit because I do have patience for coaching. I believe they're going to get it going on. I believe you stack classes after classes. That's how you win football games. Yeah. But right now it just kind of also shows you that, it is probably there's some finger pointing going on. Another team, going back to John's point, Ole Miss, man. I'm looking forward to when we can get the SEC matchups and we get some of these really intriguing teams that haven't played the games yet. Like, we know this about Tennessee. They won at Oklahoma. We know this about Alabama. They went up, and whether you like Wisconsin or not, they destroyed them in the second half.
Yeah.
But when we start seeing Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, Texas, these other things, how this shakes out, guys, we're going to see a 3-loss team in the SEC in the college football playoff. I guarantee it, because the league is too doggone good. It's so good. And then you start looking at matchups. Honestly, a team that we don't even talk about here, and I predicted the wrong first game. Miami looks as good as anyone, in the top 10 right now, too, in my opinion. And I know we're not talking about them over the SEC schools.
No,
but Cam Ward, I've seen him for 3 years now. I've always liked him. He was a guy that I would have gone off after heavy in the portal if someone had money. He has been the missing link for Miami football, in my opinion.
Well, let me say this before I go to John. I don't think anyone's thought too much about this, but I just realized this watching this panel. I think this is the tallest panel of guests of any show in America. At 6'3" from Davenport, Iowa, Matt Dean. At 6'4" from Littleton, Colorado, Brendan Martin.
No.
And at 6'7" from
St. Petersburg, Florida, dude.
St. Petersburg, Florida.
God,
Okay.
dude, and we moved every 4 years. It's like being in the military, man.
Okay, and 6'7" from Mobile, Alabama, John Hartwell. I just wanted to make that point loud and clear. That's kind of a big deal. I'm getting to be like Letterman, but I mean, he would say something like that. But Matt and John, jump in.
Hey, I'd say jumping outside the SEC for a minute, I'm going to go back to the Tennessee analogy and what Josh Heupel has done. You know, you love him, hate him. You know, I spent a year with Josh. After he got fired at Oklahoma as the coordinator, he came to Matt Wells' staff at Utah State and was our offensive coordinator for a year.
Heupel was?
Yes, Josh Heupel.
Wow,
Yes.
what kind of dude is he? He seems like
talk about him. I remember
is.
you telling me that.
Yeah. He is. You know, the interesting thing, even at Utah State for the year, and you clearly saw the video the other day of he and his dad hugging and how close their relationship is. And his dad was a very successful high school coach. You know, his dad was on the sidelines when he was at Utah State too. Josh was a guy who, you know, he wanted to be down on the sideline as a coordinator, which was kind of interesting, but he wanted a feel of the game. But he was really good, but he's one of those guys that has kind of recycled himself. He didn't, we've talked about this before. Every coach is in two categories. You've either been fired or you're going to be fired. And Josh was one of those guys that took that opportunity, kind of reinvented himself. But I say that, and I'm not saying this about their approach, but neither one of these guys, nor myself, I'll include in there, is in danger of being on the cover of GQ magazine. But let's look at this game this week. Let's look at Illinois and Penn State because, a Josh Heupel and Brett Bielema matchup could be quite interesting at some point. But, hey, you got to give Bielema, another guy who's kind of reinvented himself. Yeah. And I think the Fighting Illini could give Penn State everything they want this week in Happy Valley.
Yeah. And you know what I think's happening, and I said this, I just catch these things when I'm out running or biking or swimming or something. It comes to my head. Cal and Stanford being in the ACC, it is making football in your backyard. Cal in the month of September has been to Auburn, Alabama and Tallahassee, Florida. I mean, we're more familiar with Cal probably than we've ever been. And I think this is cool because football, it pulls people together. And what's going on with Matt Rule at Nebraska is he's been to every high school in the great state of Nebraska. 56% of his roster is in-state kids. That's how you build a foundation. And linemen, offensive linemen, are willing to be developed. There's so many great stories. Iowa will win 9 or 10 games, but their offensive playbook, I believe, is haunted. I don't know why, but if they ever get an offense to go with the defense, it will be fun to watch. But big picture, the playoff, guys, as big as Georgia, Alabama is, I think what's happening is people are starting to realize every weekend is big. People that said the regular season wouldn't matter obviously aren't watching any of the games, Matt.
No, and we knew this, right? We go from 4 to 12. It just electrifies everybody. And I want to piggyback on what John said. A lot of people know about Bielema. Played at Iowa, played for Hayden Fry, and I think on his leg he's got a tattoo of the Hawkeye still. So I just want you to know,
Reuben Foster.
he's an Iowa at heart, even though he coaches the Fighting Illini. And John, I thought one of the better wins of the year for any team was a road win for Illinois against the very fired up Nebraska team on a Friday night in a really good setting. Penn State came out of the blocks early, big win at West Virginia, their rival. Didn't look as great a couple of the other games, but this is going to be a fun game to watch. So far in the Big Ten, a story we're not even talking about. And I warned my son about this because he now is a DPP in the Big Ten, but Indiana, surprisingly, has got a good football offense at least. We'll see how look at Indiana's schedule. It's very favorable. So you're going to see some teams that get 9, 10, maybe even 11 wins that are going to be considered for stuff they never were considered for in the past.
Yeah. John, I know you said you've got about 30 minutes with us. So before you go, we're going to bring in Gary Harris in just a second. Just your closing comments, John. Great take. I will see you tomorrow in either the state capital of Alabama, Montgomery. I'll be at Lake Martin tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to stay out there for the weekend while I'm in Auburn. But your closing comments, and looking forward to meeting you. And I will splurge. I'll bring a 30 rack of hams.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned the great day of college football in the state of Alabama. You've got a big matchup early. You've got Navy at UAB. You've got, obviously, Oklahoma at Auburn. We play at Troy, and then Alabama, Georgia. So there's a lot of great football. Again, glad, not happy for our friends in the state of Georgia, and thoughts and prayers go out to them. And hopefully you guys fare well too, Brendan, in the storm. But looks like the Alabama games, or there's games in the state of Alabama, the storm will have gone by that time. But looking forward to it. A big game for us against Troy, 2-1, obviously coming off a less than stellar day in Austin. But I think there's a lot of teams that are going to have less than a stellar day in Austin, and getting underway in conference play. And what a lot of folks don't know, I know you guys got to meet Bryant Vincent a couple of weeks ago when he was on. Bryant Vincent's first full-time job in football, he was the offensive coordinator at Charles Henderson High School, literally right across the street from the stadium there in Troy. So a little bit of a homecoming for him too. But guys, as always, appreciate it. Enjoyed visiting with y'all. Gary, good to see you.
Yeah, Gary, say hi to John. I think you wanted to ask him something.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
go ahead,
I missed a couple of weeks ago after the big win over UAB. I just wanted to congratulate you. I thought that was a huge win for ULM, particularly with the tie-ins between the two programs, and just blitzed them. And they're not a bad football team.
No, they're not. And we were fortunate in that game. And, I'll give a little tidbit here too, even though we played Texas last week, and we had a week off between UAB and Texas. The Sunday after that UAB game, our staff started prepping on Troy. So, they struggled early. They beat FAMU last weekend. They're 1-3, but it's a huge game for us, and I look for us to come out and play really well there in Veterans Memorial Stadium in T. Roy, Alabama.
Nice stadium. Really nice stadium.
I love it. John, I'll talk to you in a little bit. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Gary Harris, WVUA Channel 23. True Grit Journalism is on display here. WVUA, also Tider Insider TV Tuesday nights with Rodney Orr. You cannot get a better show covering Alabama anywhere in the country. It also does a great show right after this, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Gary, your thoughts about the big weekend this weekend? I know this is probably one of the best soccer games. Oh, that's right. There's a football game. We got to talk about Georgia and Alabama. So many storylines, but again, you're there every day. Tell us what you think is going to happen.
Well, it is big. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, I always, as a broadcaster, listen to coaches and understand they all count one. I get it. And you got to be good enough. I always like what Gene Stallings used to say, you just lose one of those games that you're supposed to win and find out how big it is. And people would always say when he was coaching, well, they couldn't have beat so-and-so today, but his goal was always to be good enough to go 1-0 every week, to beat who you're playing on that Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to treat it as a coach. But as a fan or broadcaster, I mean, some games are bigger than others. There's no other way around it. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And, I was talking with Rodney Orr on Tider Insider TV this week, and we were talking about the fact that the loser of this game isn't by any means out of the college football playoff chase, clearly. But your margin for error is smaller. And if you win this game, if you're Alabama and you're able to beat Georgia, or you're Georgia and you're able to beat Alabama, you got a little bit of a mulligan. I mean, that's going to allow you a slip up somewhere along the line. So plus in terms of perception, where Alabama is in this conference right now, I think that there has been, I think it's a concerted effort by a lot in the media to try to frame the last few years as Georgia has surpassed Alabama. And in some ways, I would argue, of course, I cover Alabama. I would argue that since 2020, if this is slipping, most programs would love to slip to this level. They won the national championship in 2020 undefeated. 2021 won the SEC championship and played for the national title and lost to Georgia. 2022 did not make it to the playoff, but lost an overtime game at LSU on the final play of the game, and then lost to Tennessee on the final play of the game. Yeah. Then in 2023, bounced back and won the SEC championship and played in the college football playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl and lost to Michigan in overtime. So a lot of people say Alabama slipped, and I'm like, boy, that's a tough barometer to live up to. But if they lose this game, then I do think the people that have been, there's been a group of analysts and media people that have been trying to predict Alabama's demise now for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And they just keep getting, pushed back. If Alabama loses this game, they're all going to come out of the woodwork, and who some of them are. And they're going to say, well, we told you. I remember when Alabama lost to Texas last year at home and then had that really embarrassing performance in South Florida. Yeah. I mean, I saw reputable media people saying this team's going to lose 4 or 5 games. It's over. It's done. And then they just had to kind of, as Alabama continued to build momentum, they just kind of had to, just be quiet, but they're just waiting. They're waiting to pounce, Yeah. And so with Kalen DeBoer here, Kirby Smart's 1-5 against Alabama, but it's going to be framed that he was 1-5 against Nick Saban. That's the people that are anti-Alabama are going to say, well, that was Nick Saban's Alabama. This is different. So it's a big game for Kalen DeBoer. I don't know any other way to put it. I said all that to kind of preface what I'm going to say now. It's a big game. And if you lose the football game, you got to go on and play next week, and you got a lot to play for. But for Alabama, if Alabama loses this game, it's going to be framed that, listen, Nick Saban owned Georgia. Alabama didn't own Georgia. Kalen DeBoer's 0-1. They were at home. So I think there's a lot on the line in terms of perception, in terms of your national ranking, in terms of the way that people are going to want to view you. I think most of the real football people understand Alabama's good, understand Kalen DeBoer is a terrific coach. But if they lose this game, a lot of those people that are just, out there looking for clicks are going to go ahead and try to just dismiss Alabama as a second-tier type SEC team behind Texas, behind Georgia, behind Ole Miss, and even behind Missouri. And I have a lot of respect for what Drinkwitz has done, but I'm, even before the Vanderbilt game, this wanting to put Missouri up there with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, I still don't see it. But they have got a good schedule. But anyway, this is a huge football game. There's no way around it. And, you've got the former president of the United States coming in. You're going to have other celebrities. Game day is not only going to be here tomorrow morning, they're going to stay. They're staying the whole day, and they're going to do some coverage on ABC, which is usually unusual. Usually after the game day, they pack up and fly, on out of here. So it's big.
Coach Dean, jump in here with Gary Harris. Great take.
Gary, good to see you, man.
Hey, Matt.
Fantastic analysis as always. And I'll take it a little bit further. I think it's a huge game. I expect both these two teams to be in the college football playoff. I expect one of these two teams to be playing for the SEC championship, which would be a 1-4 seed. And it wouldn't be surprising if Texas surpassed both of these teams, if they still had home games in the first round. That's how good I think both these football teams are. The only thing that's really surprising to me, Gary, as I look at this game, I'm confused. We've seen Georgia with some duds before. A few years ago, they went to Missouri. They didn't play well. They got out of there with a win. The Kentucky game, after Kentucky kind of got boat raced at home by South Carolina, I'm just looking at this game and I'm like, I haven't seen that hiccup from Alabama yet, but I also read or heard some stuff yesterday. Hey, maybe they didn't show a lot of the Kentucky game, saving it for Bama. I get that, but still, to me, a 13-12 win doesn't show that. I just, if I was a handicapper right now, I think Bama's going to win the football game. I mean, what I've seen so far, but I know in these type of games, throwing it out the window. Are you confused a little bit about Georgia's performance against Kentucky? Does that throw you off a little bit?
Not really, Matt. I just because of what you just said, Georgia and Alabama on Saban's run, every now and then would have a game like that and they'd come back. I just think with both teams having a bye, regardless of what happened 2 weeks ago, if Georgia had won 40-0, or if they won 13-12, which is the case, and Alabama had, let's say Alabama struggled at Wisconsin and got out of there with a 17 13 victory instead of 42-10. I think this is kind of a standalone game. I do. If both teams played last week, or one team played and one team didn't, but I just think for Georgia, they were fortunate to win the game. There's no other way around it. Now, I do think this, from a football standpoint, they're just not as explosive on offense. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You can't lose a McConkey and lose a Brock Bowers, and even though they're good in the running game, maybe in the offensive line has had a couple injuries, and Ratledge isn't going to play. I just don't think they're I think they're really a really great team. I don't think they're as good on offense as they've been. I think defensively they're fine. I mean, they haven't given up a touchdown. I think the defense is right there where it's always been. But I don't think this team on offense is as good as its predecessors. And I think because of that, for them to come in and win here in Tuscaloosa, I think they're going to have to keep the game in the teens or the 20s. Yeah. I don't think if it gets up in the 30s, they can keep up. So I'm like you, Matt. I got Alabama winning the football game 27-17. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Georgia's too good on defense, but I don't think that Georgia offensively is going to light it up. I think this is a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and I feel like Alabama's going to score late to put it away, if you will, if you want to call a 10-point win, putting it away. But I think both teams will be ready to play. In these kind of games, I think, handicapping, and I'm not a handicapper, but I like to do it for fun. I think when you have great programs like this, you just have to assume if both teams play their best, who wins. Yeah. And I think in this, and I've picked against Alabama against Georgia. I picked against them in the SEC championship game last year, and I've caught some flack for it. But I thought last year if both teams played their best, Georgia would win the game. And I don't think Georgia played its best. And I think it's one reason Alabama won. If both teams play their best this Saturday night at Bryant-Denny Stadium, I think Alabama's going to win the football game.
Gary, Jordan Hill is going to be on with us in about 9 minutes. Covers Georgia for 24/7 Sports. And I know that's why I had him come on. I know you've got to do a show, but if y'all could ask a couple of questions with each other, that would be cool. But I want to give you a compliment. Matt, it's the conversations you have off the air with people, how much you work on this, and you do know Alabama football. And honestly, you're better than most of these national guys because you're so dialed in on what's going on. And we had Roman Harper on Friday. He's from Prattville, proud Prattville Lion. Same thing you just mentioned. He said, Georgia, I just don't see those guys out on the edge, the playmakers. And I'm going to get into that, when Jordan's on, but you got to have those explosive playmakers. But explosive plays, I think, don't laugh, but I think Auburn leads the nation in explosive pass plays of 40 and 50 yards. And they're like 14th in average yards per carry running the ball. But that gets you a 2-2 record.
No, you can't turn it over. I mean,
that's right. You can't turn it over.
You can't.
Yeah, Auburn's a great example of how you're right, how stats can be skewed a little bit.
Yeah.
You can have explosives, you can have a good yards per carry, and they have, moved the football. But then again, that's why probably the biggest stat of all is hanging on the football. Anytime you turn it over, you give a team an extra possession. And in Auburn's case, a couple of those turnovers have been when they were going in. So, I mean, Auburn's an interesting team. I'm kind of glad you mentioned them because I'm not shocked because you have to look at where Auburn's at. I mean, they've had 3 losing seasons in a row. I mean, it's not like this program has been lighting it up. But still, with the 5 straight home games to start the season, with the fact that Hugh Freeze had an opportunity, if he had chosen, to go out and get a quarterback in the portal. He stuck with the guys that he had. He brought in those freshman wide receivers. I expected them to be 4-0 going into the Oklahoma game, and quite honestly, I expected them to be 5-0. And I picked them to beat Arkansas. Obviously, I picked them to beat Cal. So, I like to say, people always say good teams find a way to win. I think bad teams find a way to lose. And when things aren't going your way, it just almost it's like Murphy's Law. You'll see a team that looks like they're going to win a football game and they can't close it out. Just something inexplicable will happen. The punter will drop a snap, or a guy will run out of bounds to stop a clock and leave time on the clock when he should have got. Those kind of things happen to teams that aren't winning. And Auburn is right now in that mode. I mean, it's just you watch them and it's like they're running in quicksand. I mean, they'll have something good happen, and then inevitably, and I thought the quarterback switch was a bad sign. I know Hank Brown played well against New Mexico, but when you start a redshirt freshman in an SEC game, he looked like what he is, a guy that's inexperienced and got a little overwhelmed. So then you go back to Peyton Thorne. I think they're a little bit of a mess. Now, I think if you can win Saturday, nothing helps you like winning a game, particularly a big game. If Auburn would have won that game, but if they lose that game, man, this thing, in my opinion, if they lose Saturday to Oklahoma, could go off the rails here.
Yeah, and it does. And Connor O'Gara was on the show with us yesterday. Brendan and I talked with him Saturday down south. I never knew this, and I think I know a little bit about Auburn and the SEC. He said Peyton Thorne was benched 4 times when he was the quarterback at Michigan State. Matt Dean, they play pretty good football up there. He's from Naperville, Illinois. Look, when you start having to play a red shirt, I picked Arkansas, by the way, to win last week. I said I'm Auburn, but
you called it.
Yeah, and I'm wrong plenty, but you better fix these things. And Matt, as a coach, when things start spiraling out of control, you've got to stop the locker room cancers, because junk in, junk out. Your take?
Yeah, it's ironic, guys. I had a chance to watch Peyton play for the Spartans several times because of my Big Ten infatuation. And I wasn't shocked when he went to Auburn, because the thing about Coach Freeze is, when you're a really good offensive football coach, you kind of think you can fix anybody, right? And I think it was the perfect time in his program to take a chance, knowing that they were in a situation where if he hit a home run, brilliant, but he knew he still needed a couple more recruiting classes maybe to get to where he wanted to get. So why not take a chance? Didn't like some of his comments this week, but we've already talked about that. But, furthermore, I think this is just the era where in the college era of free agency, you're going to see some interesting decisions in the portal. Some hit, some don't hit. Like, the Ducks go out and get Dylan Gabriel, and so far that's looked really good for them. But, at the end of the day, I don't know for a fact, but that costs money. Cam Ward going to Miami cost a lot of money. So there are other factors in there to keep your locker room intact by not putting all your money in a quarterback. And I'm just speculating here, Rob. The thing about it is, I think the Cal game, and going back to Gary's point, it's the same thing when I coach basketball. If we could win the turnover battle, everything else didn't have to be as pretty. We didn't have to make as many shots. If we could defend and win the turnover battle in the last 5 minutes of the game, it usually meant we had a chance to win the game. But when you throw these big explosives and that one long run, when they fumble inside the 10-yard line, that is devastating to the mindset of your football team. It affects the psyche of your defense and also affects the psyche of your head coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, and real quick, interestingly, Oklahoma rolled the dice and let Dylan Gabriel go away because they didn't want to lose Jackson Arnold, the highest-rated offensive recruit in school history. And now he gets benched at the halftime of the Tennessee game. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. Got Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa, Channel 23, Tider Insider, and Tide 100.9 Radio. I want to get y'all to maybe a few questions about the game coming up. Jordan, we were talking about the difference in Georgia this year and the last few years is there's no Ladd McConkey, there's no Brock Bowers, who, no surprise, is kicking ass in the NFL. And he's the best football player I've seen at Georgia in a while on either side of the line. But your take on Saturday night's big game with the big guy in Tuscaloosa?
I think the biggest thing to me, you kind of hit on it right there, Rob, is I need to see Georgia's receivers step up. And it's not only a case of those guys having to make explosive plays. Kirby talked about that earlier in the week, that he knows Jalen Milroe and those guys are capable of making explosive plays. But perimeter blocking, if you go back and watch that Kentucky game, I thought Georgia's receivers struggled. And I think that's something we kind of took for granted with Ladd McConkey, with Brock Bowers, with Marcus Rose and Jack Saint. Those guys were fantastic blockers. And I think that it's kind of hurt the run game. It's hurt Georgia trying to spring some screens and trying to get some easy yards that way. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're getting ready for a 4-quarter fight. I think this is going to be a really entertaining game. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. And to me, one of the big areas of focus is Georgia's receivers. They got to rise to the occasion. Georgia's tight ends, too. They have not been very productive in the first year since Brock Bowers has been gone. Those guys are going to have to step up if Georgia's going to get a big road win.
Gary?
No, I agree with what Joe said there. I just what I said earlier. I think the biggest difference in this Georgia team, I think defensively, obviously they're good. I mean, they haven't given up a touchdown. They're going to get a deep lineman or two back. I don't think there are any issues there. I just think offensively, they're not what they've been. And, I've had to live here and work here, and I keep hearing every year Alabama's not what they've been. Well, I don't think Georgia offensively is what they've been. That doesn't mean they can't win the game. But I don't think they're going to win a shootout here. If this game gets into a score fest, I think it favors Alabama. I think Georgia's got to, possess the football. Obviously, the quarterback's good. I was surprised that he looked a little rattled in that Kentucky game, but give Kentucky credit. They got after him. But I think you can make an argument. I think Alabama's good on defense. I think they're talented. I don't know if they're going to be as disruptive in the game as Kentucky was. So there may be more opportunities for Georgia there offensively, but I don't think this Georgia team on offense is what they've been. They've had a bye week, to work on some of those things. But I think they want to come in here and move the football, get first downs, try to shorten the game a little bit. I think Kirby said this week, the thing about Milroe is, you can do all the right things and be where you're supposed to be defensively, and he can just make a play. I mean, he has that ability. He's a superb athlete and powerful too. So, and then sometimes you play coverage and he kills you with his legs, and sometimes you try to get after him and he can make a throw downfield if you're a man-to-man and you turn your back to him, he can run. So he's kind of a wild card in this game. But as I said, I think it's going to be a fourth quarter game. I think the scoring is going to be lower than what a lot of people think, and I think Georgia's going to have an opportunity to win. I think ultimately Alabama's going to win the game at home, and that's just the way I see it.
Jordan, along the line what he just said, what do we not know about this Georgia team? They have a close scare every year. Last year it was on the road at Auburn, but Missouri a couple of years ago, Kentucky. Tell us about that, because this is great conversation, and I really appreciate both of y'all, as I do Matt and John, everybody on this show, and Brendan, because this is what the fans want to hear.
For sure. And I think Gary hit on the big question to me is Georgia's offense. And I'd encourage folks, in about 30 minutes when we have a story go up talking about explosive plays and looking through the numbers for both teams. The thing that stood out to me, Georgia's not had very many explosive run plays. And think about the tradition of Georgia. And even in the last few years, they like to throw the ball, but they've had some explosive backs. To me, the guy that is probably going to determine whether Georgia wins or loses, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is going to be Trevor Etienne. Can they spring Trevor Etienne? Can they get him going? And again, I think people outside of probably Athens haven't really paid attention to Georgia lost Tate Ratledge. That's the starting right guard. And that offensive line honestly was struggling before Tate got hurt in that Kentucky game. But, I think this game, if Georgia's going to win it, I think Gary boiled it down correctly. Georgia's going to want to try to slow the pace, and a big piece of that is going to be running the football. Trevor Etienne, I think he was the MVP other than the defense of the Kentucky game, because Georgia's only touchdown drive, he was the driving force. He wasn't the one who scored the touchdown, but he pushed them down the field and helped that possession, convert third downs and keep the drive alive. So, I'm watching this run game because Georgia can't afford to be one-dimensional. They can't rely on just Carson Beck making plays. Got to have the run game going. Got to get Trevor Etienne going. That's something I'm going to be watching very closely.
Gary, I know you've got to do your show in just a minute. Closing comments on that, and then Matt, you and I and Brendan will cross-examine Jordan on this stuff. This is fun.
Yeah, Jordan's got some great insight, obviously, covering Georgia. I'll just say this. As I said earlier, when these two teams play, whether it hadn't been many regular season matchups, but going all the way back to Mark Richt, this isn't new. These two teams have been playing for a lot, and in fact, you trace the Saban dynasty, the first really big win he had, some people will say Clemson, but I will say that Georgia game in 2008 in Athens, when Georgia was a solid favorite and it was 30-0 at halftime. That kind of kicked it all off. And since then, Alabama's had Georgia's number for the most part. Now, you can't dismiss that Georgia won a national championship by beating Alabama. But I think this game, the loser of this game is going to have a lot to play for, and the winner of the game is going to have a little bit of a mulligan. But both these teams are going to be heard from again. So I just hope fan bases on both sides don't look at this as a national championship game, because it's not. It's a big game. It's going to have a lot to say with what happens this season, but both these teams are going to have an opportunity, win or lose, to be in that playoff and have an ultimate chance to write their destiny, which would be to win a national championship. And as we saw when Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship game a couple years ago, Georgia came back and won the Natty, and Alabama's won the Natty. Now we got an expanded playoff, so both these teams are going to factor in regardless of what happens on Saturday night. Hey, thanks, guys. I got to go.
Thank you so much, man. Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. Matt, jump in here with Jordan. I know you've got some questions, and Brendan. By the way, all my friends, we had a couple of guys from Lake Charles, Louisiana, in our hunting club. They say it's not Etienne. They say, Tanner Stein says it's Ashawn. They want to give the Cajun pronunciation.
This is a review. We've already discussed the fact that this is not Ashawn. Okay? It's I don't block Etienne.
It's going to be fun. Matt, jump in here with Jordan. This is great.
No, I think the one thing too, guys, and Jordan, I think this is in the Bulldogs' favor, is I think for years, because Kirby worked for Nick, and then Kirby goes to Georgia, and a lot of people had it Kirby versus Nick, and obviously Nick had a better record if you look at the head-to-head. But now it's Nick's not there, and I think to a degree, I just think Kirby will have a phenomenal plan for Milroe. I'm not a defensive coordinator, but I think they will do their due diligence, and I think it will be a low-scoring game. Because of that, Jordan, as you alluded to, and Gary kind of did the same thing, it's going to be a close game going in the fourth quarter, and I really think either team can win. It's going to come down to who can create turnover here or there, explosive plays. Can Georgia get their running game going against Bama? Now, I watched a lot of the Bama-Wisconsin game, which is not really a great judgment because Bama knocked out their quarterback, Van Dyke, in the first quarter. And then Bama kind of methodically put it to them. But I came away thinking that, Bama's defense played pretty physical in that football game. The line of scrimmage matters. And I think what you mentioned, Jordan, losing Rutledge on the line of scrimmage, to me, this is a very even matchup. But does that really put, more stress on that quarterback and running game because of a really quality offensive lineman not playing? I think it does.
For sure, and I think it's a situation, too. Carson looked uncomfortable in that Kentucky game, and honestly, it was going on before Tate Ratledge left with that ankle injury. So watching that, looking at, too, Matt hit on one of the biggest things that I think if Georgia's going to be successful in this game, it's going to be trying to turn Jalen Milroe over, because not only do you want to steal a possession, I think their best chance at winning this game on the road is to frustrate Jalen Milroe, make him press, make him make decisions that he wouldn't normally make. I look back at that SEC title game, a big reason it was so close, Jalen Walker had the game of his life. He only played like 12 snaps, had like 2 sacks, a couple tackles for a loss. They've got to get after Jalen Milroe. They have to at least make him hesitate. Even if he doesn't turn the ball over, make him think twice. I think that's going to be big if Georgia's going to win this game.
You see this comment by Superfly. I'm telling you, I'm not a Bama. I'm not a Georgia guy, but bank on it. If Smart keeps Milroe a pocket passer, Georgia by 10. That's interesting take. You want to tackle that?
If it fans and butts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
That's right.
My thing with a guy like Jalen, and it's really any dynamic quarterback like that, I always default to, you're not going to stop him. You got to just hope you can contain him. He's going to make some plays. And the thing is, I think if you can at least not have it happen early, he breaks a big play. He keeps a play alive and say hits Ryan Williams down the field. That ignites the Bryant-Denny Stadium fans. That kind of gets the nerves going on the Georgia side. I think you at least have to make him earn some of those big plays. He's going to make plays, but it's just a matter of, one, trying not to let it happen early where it kind of rattles everybody, but two, just trying to keep him in check, and for every big play he has, getting after him, hitting him, making him throw an errant pass, making him take a sack or throw the ball out of bounds. I think Georgia's got to have to live with some of those moments.
And this is I think it'd be a cool story, is the sense of urgency. And Gary alluded to this a minute ago, the mulligan. I mean, you lose this game, you're still in, but your margin of error decreases significantly. So if Georgia were to lose, then the Texas game's bigger. then the Ole Miss game, but then you still got to play the other ones before that. I think that's kind of where we are with the 12-team playoff.
Well, I think it's funny too. I was talking to somebody about this on a radio hit yesterday, and I made the point that, I don't think this would have necessarily been a knockout game in a 14 playoff. It only being in September. I mean, you obviously margin for error a whole lot smaller than compared to with a 12-team playoff, but we had these kind of matchups in the 4-team, and teams were still alive and still had to fight. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a situation where whoever loses this game, they're not out by a long shot. And I think that, it just – I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I love the fact there's this 12-team playoff because we're already in September.
I love it.
Talking about, who is still going to be in the mix. And just think about by the time we get to November, Georgia plays Tennessee. I see Tennessee as being a team, especially by that point, very much still in the conversation for the 12-team playoff. We're going to have a lot of teams vying for these 12 spots. I think it's going to make for a very exciting close to the season.
Matt?
Yeah, I agree everything Jordan's saying. I also take it a step further. I said earlier on the show, the winner of this game has got like a 90% chance to go to the GFP, according to some of the odds makers. And then even the loser of this game is over 60%. So Jordan, what he's saying is spot on. I also think, looking at the game, one last take on my opinion is Milroe has a little bit of Lamar Jackson, and you can contain him for the majority of the game, but he's the one guy on the field that can break that explosive play and be the difference maker. And you could do an outstanding job on Milroe the majority of the game, but if he makes 2 explosive plays, that could be the difference in the game. But from a defense perspective, I love Kirby. I love Georgia defensively. I think Bama's really good defensively. I think it's a low-scoring game. Whoever can stay away from the turnovers, I think is going to win.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say too, to Matt's point, something Kirby said. I think that was on Tuesday. That with Jalen Milroe, he said there's never one play where you, as the coach on the other side, go, I know exactly what's going to happen on this play, and that's the danger of it, and that's what makes him so effective.
And that was what I remember last year. Is like it's wow, did you see that? Or wow, did you see that? And that's what he does. But his legs, like Jalen Hurts, he's a better passer, I think, in college than Jalen Hurts was. So that's what it is. But another thing, Jordan, this is a question. It's starting to come up. You're there on campus at Georgia, and it's that. And I heard this that at another SEC school. Well, the football players are taking online classes. They're kind of in their own world. They're really not even having the college experience. Are the guys at Georgia still on campus, going to class? I mean, during the China virus, a lot of things changed because there was online and in some places there was no interaction. But what is going on with that? Because one of the coolest things about being in college is you had a class or a lab with that guy and you realized they really are student athletes.
Yeah, I think it depends on how old the guys are. I know some of the older guys. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a transfer that came in that we talked to was talking about, because he's a junior or a senior, he's taking mostly online classes. But I think those younger guys, when you're still kind of going through your core classes, are still taking classes on campus and among their classmates. I mean, it makes me think. I wasn't in this class. I had a roommate had a class with Todd Gurley, and they were going around introducing themselves and saying their major, and he said Todd Gurley Heisman major, and didn't quite come to pass, but it makes for a good story after the fact for sure.
We saw him out at Media Days. Brendan and I did in Dallas. God, what a back. And the thing is that's cool is, with what's going on at all these SEC schools, people still want to identify with them as student athletes. Jordan, I know you got a show coming up here. You got a story coming out. Let people know how they can follow you and what you're going to be talking about heading in. We're about 48 hours, a little about 60 hours away from the kickoff of that game Saturday night.
Definitely. Dogs247.com on Twitter, at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247. And yeah, continuing to preview this thing, I tell folks listening, 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern time today over on our Dogs 24/7 YouTube. I'll have Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7. We're going to preview this game, get a good feel and understanding of this Alabama team, and talk about what we expect to see on Saturday. And then, continuing the pregame stuff, getting ready for Saturday night, and looking forward to getting over to Bryant-Denny and getting ready for what I think is going to be a really exciting game.
All right, Jordan, we will see you next week, man. Thank you so much. Matt, golly, the excitement, and Brendan, we all know it. It's all over the country. This is what's so cool. But I keep going back. Oklahoma did. I mean, look how that's turned out. Okay, let Dylan go. We got Jackson Arnold coming in. He had a big bowl game, threw a couple of picks. Hell, that has mattered. He's been ineffective up to this point. I just say, if I'm Oklahoma, I would have said, Jackson, let the best man win. I think that was strategically. Now, Hawkins, is it going to be Jackson Arnold? It's going to be an interesting thing. But, Matt, as we wrap up here, I want to say that, man, we're the most blessed country in the history of the world. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Your neighbors are going to need you, folks, in the path of this hurricane. We got Brendan Martin, our man. We love him down in Ocala, Florida. Buddy is over in Panama City. But everybody that is watching this show and our audience is wide, and thank you for growing it. Be prepared. Brendan said he put a 180-foot tarp up on top of the house with, roofing screws and stuff in there. But be prepared because this thing's
coming. I YouTubed it, Matt. Don't worry. I YouTube how to do it. So I did a better job than the damn roofers did, or lack thereof. So, hey, this is the current map of the storm here, folks, from Mike's weather page. I always promote this guy because if you're a Floridian, this guy's got 2 million followers just on Facebook. Wow. And he's probably the most popular guy as far as, like, he's not a meteorologist, but he storm tracks, and he really gives you what's going on with the tropics as far as from Floridian's perspective, and he does it for free. So I'm just giving him a shout. I don't know him, no affiliation, but Mike's weather page is on all the platforms, but he's on all the time. This is from his website, spaghettymodels.com. So he's got all the different atmospheric stuff and everything, but this is a live shot of what the most current deal is with this Helena and Cat 4 gaining strength. The tracks are still what they thought, which is right up Tallahassee's, but the entire state of Florida is going to be affected because the storm is so huge. So please, this thing popped up so fast. No one, they were talking last night. A lot of people in Tallahassee may not even you heard it as of last night. So be careful and be smart. And if you're in the evacuation zone, get out. Do what you're supposed to do. You're a Floridian. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't be dumb, and be safe out there.
And our good friend Shoney down in Valdosta, I know he's getting ready. We got a lot of viewers that text me and come on here all over the place. But so we were going to do a live Saturday show in Auburn. Ixnay on that, because I don't even know if Brendan's going to have power. And I think
I'm not going to be able to I can't get out of here right now.
Yeah, so we'll find a better weekend. Frank Duffy had to abort bringing Bingo 1 down there because a big high profile RV. He didn't want to be blown off the highway, and so we'll just reschedule that. But we will be in Auburn for the Oklahoma game, going down there. But I think everybody, Georgia, we got. Atlanta is under a tropical storm warning.
The entire state of Georgia is under a tropical storm warning. The entire state of South Carolina is under a and Tennessee. This is not normal, folks.
And tomorrow we got a great show. We're going to have like Jason Campbell, former Auburn quarterback on the Auburn Network, is going to join us. Chuck Lavelle, a great musician. The Tree Man is going to check in from the Allman Brothers, the Stones, Pink Floyd, George Harrison,
no pressure on me tomorrow, right? Just like get a couple of banners. Hey, Rob's like, I'm going to stack the show tomorrow just so you can. And there's a live show on Saturday. I'm Rob Brown.
By the way, when I got in from running last night, Audrey had been on the phone with Brendan. She said, "You're not doing a Saturday show." No. Audrey, let's just be honest. Audrey runs this thing, and Brendan, and I'm just here. But I mean, seriously. We're worried about his safety. He has we don't want.
Don't worry about him and Stella. Safety. The folks in Tallahassee. We got.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And so we'll be doing it, and tomorrow morning Everybody get ready. Matt, your closing comments. And again, thanks everybody for watching. Support all of our sponsors at sidelines.live and check us out, Coach Matt Dean, a very wise man.
I'm just first and foremost, everyone be safe this weekend. Make right decisions in your travel, and Brendan, thinking about you. And also, what a great weekend in college football. And what we love about this is there's many more to come, right? This is a great weekend. We got these games coming up. I'm telling you guys, with the 12-team playoff, every weekend is imperative. So it's going to be fun.
Kaboom. I love it. Hey, see y'all tomorrow, man. Be careful.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Night, John Boy.
See you, Brendan. Take care.
Stay gold, Johnny. Stay gold.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.